All good to go.
Okay, all right, thank you. Welcome everybody. We've got 2 workshops to deal with today. And unexpectedly, we headed off with the pass. Councillor Smith. Your mute is off, but we can't hear you. No.
Well done, Mr. Chair.
It's going to be, yeah, thank you to the accolades of the participants. We move on. So first we've got the dog control. And I guess, Tracy, you're unmuted, so I'll take it you're leading us through this.
I think Bessie's going to introduce us and then we'll go from there.
Bessie, over to you.
Cool. So good afternoon, everyone. So as mentioned, today's workshop will focus on the revised versions of the dog control bylaw, policy and dog control area maps following the 2 previous workshops in May and July of this year, as well as the informal feedback period in September. The intention following this workshop is to seek consultation approval for the bylaw, policy and maps at the November PNR meeting. Hannah is going to briefly talk about the informal feedback period, where we're at now and the planned consultation period dates, and then Tracy and Kirsty will cover off the main proposed changes and improvements to the maps. So over to you, Hannah.
Thank you. Hi again, everyone. So as a summary, the dog control bylaw and policy are both legislative documents setting out how council will fulfil its legislative responsibility in regards to dog control, and the bylaw enforces the policy. So as noted in the memo, we've had 2 workshops already. The first focused on the bylaw and the second in July on the policy. At the second workshop, it was agreed there'd be a period of informal engagement, which we've completed, on the proposed changes to the dog control areas in particular. And we received feedback from councillors, Raglan Community Board, Huntly Community Board, Tamhere Community Board, and Ohene Wai Area Committee. The feedback received has been incorporated into the proposed changes that we're discussing today, with further detail and attachment 2. We've also had some discussion with Council's Open Spaces team in regard to some of the feedback received, particularly regarding issues around signage, which is again noted in more detail in attachment 2. And as Bessie mentioned, planning to bring this to the Policy and Regulatory Committee in November, with consultation scheduled for approximately 8 weeks over December and January. I'll pass it to Tracy now to talk about the key proposed changes.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just hang on a second. Noel, is your sound working yet?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to go out and then back in. Can you tell me why this has been live streamed? Because it's not a meeting per se.
So all open workshops are live streamed, and this was requested to be an open workshop.
Okay, no, that's fine. Just clarity, that's all. Thank you.
Right. Tracy.
Excellent, thank you. I thought I'd touch on the policy first in regards to the maps. One of the key changes is previously we had both leash exercises areas and on-lead exercise areas are specified as different. We've merged that into the one category now for clarity. And we are trying to ensure that it's clear to our community that everywhere else, unless it's a specified off-leash exercise area, is on-leash or prohibited. In the maps now, we're going to mark playgrounds with a dot, which you'll have seen in the attachments. We have done a lot of rework of these maps as required requested by consultation from both councillors and from the community boards. There are a few issues still with the maps that have gone out to you that we are going to work on and have correct before going out to open consultation. Are you happy for me to just run through those now? Cool. Map number 33, Papahua. We intend to remove the orange on the airfield and also the green along the Marine Parade area, because it's requested that that's to be an on-leash area. Te Awa Reserve in Tamahiri, remove the orange from where it is down the side of the river where the erosion is.
Excuse me, is it possible that you could go through the maps in the order we've got them? Because I'm only just struggling to find the map that you're talking about.
The number of the map is at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Of the map page.
So you're starting from the back map. So I've got map 15, map 17, and then I go to map 8.
I'm not convinced the maps are in the right order in our attachment, to be fair.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm fairly sure how I work through them will be in the order of the attachment, but I'll probably be going a bit quick. I can slow down though. The Te Awa Reserve map is map 36. I can.
It's about page 71.
Thank you.
In fact, it shows completely the wrong area.
Yes. We had a meeting with the Open Spaces team, and with that discussion, discussed making the off-leash area part of the green space at the top, not far from the road, but also making it clear that dogs are still prohibited around the playground in that area. The next one I had on my list was map 28, Kōwhara. I'm not sure which page that's on, sorry. There we go. Page 73.
Actually, pardon me, I had a question on that.
Yeah.
And thank you for making the amendments. Where you have, so I'm picking that the reason that you have some towns, there's about 3, I think, where you're allowed dogs in the main street on leads. So is it necessary to actually specify that out in those towns? Because the way that you look at it, you could argue, well, you have to have them on lead up the main road, but once you get to the top of the main road, they don't have to be on a lead. You know, in my opinion, all dogs are on leads when they're on streets, but it just seems an extra layer. There's about 3 maps that are like that. So I raise it, I'm not going to die in a ditch over it.
We had a robust conversation around that in regards to the northern towns in Councillor Church's and Henderson's area. And in that situation, I believe we've taken the maps out of the attachment just to be very clear that if it's not an off-leash area and it's not a prohibited area, it is on leash. But I absolutely can see what you're saying in regards to the Te Kōwhara map.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Can I just add a comment about the Te Kōwhara map, please? I noticed with the new zoning, the prohibited area around the playground, which extends quite a direction in each way. Unfortunately, that also encompasses the safe pedestrian crossing area for getting across from one side of town to the other side of town across the railway lines. So many people do walk their dogs from one side of town to the other on leads, but now can't access the safe walkway in order to cross the railway lines. How is that going to be addressed, please?
So this was one of the maps that, as I've just brought it up, that I intended to address. We didn't intend to have that red polygon as a prohibited area for that whole area. That's a miscommunication between myself and the mapping specialty team. So that will be altered.
Okay, so because the if you look on that map, there's kind of a black line in the middle that crosses across it, sort of just slightly above where the yellow playground's marked, and that's pretty much where the crossing point is.
So the intention was to have that as an on-leash park still, but making it very clear that dogs are prohibited around the playground.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, we're pretty much in the same boat in Narrawa here. And I think the prohibited area of the main street and along Great South Road, it came about from one of the earlier community boards. And I think we really should have it as on leash area because to be just rational with the rest of the district, where most of the main streets are on leash, even Raglan, with all the people that be through there, that's an on leash area. So I think we should basically either remove it totally or just show it as an on leash if it need be.
Okay. Thank you. Jackie?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Yeah, we did have quite a discussion because Tuakau's got a map in the north around on leash areas and and prohibited areas, but Pocono's got no maps. So that was part of the discussion. We were 5,000 people up there, and I guess when I look at this, we're kind of coming down on both sides because I think the overall big thing that we're trying to say is on all roads. I think Councillor Sedgwick, you said it, is on all roads, dogs have to be on leash. And I think when I look at this and go, if that was a big, 0.20 size statement at the beginning of this bylaw, then we shouldn't actually be mapping even the towns like Te Kauwhata, parts of Raglan, Pocono and Tuakau, where we've got CBD areas. Because I think we're giving mixed messages of those areas. And even I see Ngārawa here where you've got even the esplanades or other places. Basically, if you've got a red prohibited area or you've got a playground or you've got a exercise area, sure, let's map them. And if in Huntley you've got areas where you're not allowed prohibited, that's red. But we could actually simplify our maps by taking that all out and just going that carte blanche. If on the road, that's it's on leash. Because as I give you an example of how it's confusing, the Tuakau map, CBD, but then you've got a 200 metres that you've got to put your dog in the car and then drive it 300 metres down to the park where you can then have it on leash. So like where on the line on George Street would you then put the line? But if we just took it off altogether and took that map out and just showed our prohibited areas and exercise, we would be a lot easier for people to understand our bylaw.
Tracy, would you like to comment on that?
I can comment in regards to the Te Kauwhata map that we've all probably at this stage got up in front of us. The main road section is previous mapping, and yes, we could definitely look to take that out. That's not a problem. The reason why the map encompasses the town centre is to show the exercise park and the on-leash parks that aren't on the road. But I think what we're driving at here would be in that particular map to remove the on-leash area on the main road so that it's clear that roads are all on leash.
Yeah.
Just Councillor Sedgwick's point from prior as well.
I guess I'm asking council through you, Chair, is if there's other maps, like even in Raglan, where we've got the yellow shown, or we've got that along in Ngārawa along the esplanade, for example. So do we need that yellow, that orange on there if our streets or esplanades are on leash? Because what my understanding of this policy is that sports grounds, parks, and reserves, unless they are an exercise area, are on leash areas. Tracy, is that correct?
Yes, unless they are designated prohibited areas.
Right, so unless you're prohibited, which is red, unless you're an exercise area, which is green, all other parks, reserves, and esplanades are on lead areas, like our main streets of those towns that want okay. So therefore, why are we confusing our maps with either put them on for all of our towns and communities, and we're talking like small ones like Port Waikato, for example, the whole of the streets, or Whara or wherever, or we just take it off.
There is, sorry, if I could just make a comment through the chair. The bylaw does specify that if it is a sports field, that dogs are not prohibited within the space. So by mapping some of these sports fields as on-lead areas, it enables dogs to enter them on lead. So there is some value in some instances as mapping them on lead, but I understand what you're saying, Councillor Church, in regards to potential confusion about mapping some areas as on lead when it is in fact on lead at all times automatically.
Yeah, I think the point's been well made around the streets. So the question is, in what value is there in effectively providing additional clarity for things like sports fields where there might be a temptation for the public to be uncertain about the status. I think that's the point that's coming through. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just adding to this, I do wonder why we complicate things at times. The rule is, in any public place, dogs are on lead. So why do we need to map anything? I don't actually agree. I recently was in a town not in the Waikato district, walking past a cafe, and a dog tied to the chair rushed out and tried to bite me. So it took a dislike to me for some unknown reason. And it was only because of my wife that I probably didn't kill the damn thing. But the reality is it can happen at any time, anywhere. And the more we do to protect the public, because it's about protecting the average person, it's not protecting the dog owner. The dog owner has got to respect the other person, because unless they've got 100% knowledge and control of their dog, anything can happen at any time. We've seen too many examples of that throughout our recent history around New Zealand. So why should we do anything other than just blanket leash on dogs on leash, all public places? Sports field, when children, people are excited on the field, sidelines, dogs get excited too. So I'm not a great fan of having sports events and dogs in the same place. And I'm also totally against, and I think we're doing that at Te Kowhai and others, sports fields shouldn't be places where dogs can run on or off leash for being exercised, because people play on those sports fields, and it's a disgrace that we allow and have continued to allow feces and urine to be deposited on places where humans are playing sport. So that's probably my rant for the afternoon. I just think we need to keep this simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry for being late, everybody. I was in another meeting. Hey, look, interesting listening though, and I have a lot of sympathy for what Councillor Church and Smith have just said. And when I had a look through this workshop and looked at the maps the other day, I thought to myself, God, we make life hard for ourselves and overcomplicate it. And that's no reflection on anybody. It's just how we've done it historically in the past. So there should only be two categories here. There should be prohibited areas, and all the prohibited areas, and I don't care whether they're on a lead, well, they shouldn't be in there full stop, even on a lead, is our CBDs. Because we're not talking about the mum's little Bichon or poodle or that. We're talking about people who I constantly see walking down Harris Street with a bloody horrible mongrel dog on a chain looking to tear somebody's throat out. And it makes me want to get the rifle out behind the back of the ute seat and shoot the damn thing. But at the end of the day, those are the people we actually have to build a law for. So all CBD areas and any other sensitive areas should be prohibited. Just shouldn't have dogs in there. I'm sorry, shouldn't be there. The rest of it within the urban limits should be all dogs on a lead after that. Two rules. One, CBD and sensitive, prohibited, full stop, no dogs at all. Second one, everyone else on a lead. And it should be as simple as that. But when I look at this map and I say that can be a lead there, or that can be a run there, that can be a this there, that, we make it too difficult for even the staff to administer, and we make it too difficult for ourselves too. So let's simplify it. You're either prohibited or you're lead.
Except for the guide dogs, etc. That's got to be in there.
But they're different.
Yeah.
Are totally different. They're treated the same as you or I. So they go on public transport and all that. So I'm not talking about them. But, you know, I think we just make it all too complicated for ourselves. And, you know, and I remember when we did the original bylaw around, and I'm looking at the Huntley map now, and I'm pleased to see the staff have extended it, because it was because exactly those sort of people were bringing those sorts of dogs into the CBD and intimidating people. And this doesn't just happen in Huntley, this happens throughout our district. And I've been out at Raglan and I've seen the cute little poodle from Hamilton that's tied to somebody's chair, and there's a sign standing up there that says no dogs. But I'm not going to say anything, because, you know, this is about enforcement. If you don't need to push it, don't. But the person who turns up with the mongrel that's likely to bite the next person that goes past you, yeah, that dog needs to be removed. So prohibit it and then lead on everything else within urban limits. Let's just keep it simple.
I think there'll be a range of views, and possibly some quite strong on the urban areas. But can I ask, Marilyn, so what's your view on the third category, if you like, that you didn't talk about, which is our already designated free run areas, which is
I don't look. You've got to have free run areas for dogs, and I support that. So we've got. I'm just trying to think. You've got them in Ngaruawahia. I can't think of the one in Raglan, but I do know where the one in Ngaruawahia, Horatu, Huntley, TK. I know where they are, and yeah, you've got to have those. So I don't have a problem with that in any way or form. You've got to have that. But, you know, the trouble is nowadays is dogs around playgrounds, and I get Noel's comments around dogs on grounds. My granddaughters play soccer on Endeavour Park in Hamilton, and every Saturday morning when I go in there, and there's 2 or 3 dogs running around, squatting and carrying on. Dogs don't offend me, but what they do does offend me with my grandkids having to have their faces rubbed in it, I suppose. And if you're a soccer player, you're not meant to be on the ground. You're meant to be on feet. But some of us play rugby, we did have nose rubbed in it at the time. So you know, it's just need to establish what's prohibited, what are those free run areas, and the rest of it just on a lead.
Okay, thank you. Sue, that's a hell of an intro to come on the back of. You might want to comment too on Tamahere Park, which I know you made a submission on, plus whatever else you might want to say. So take yourself off mute, and the floor is yours.
Hi there. Just following on from Mary Ellen, it's interesting. First of all, I'll say I'm not a dog owner, but I can imagine lots and lots of people would be quite upset at your comments that they couldn't take their little Bichon Frise or their handbag dog with them for a coffee. And we at Tamahere did quite a lot of consultation, prompted by a lot of questions that came through from our community about dog exercise areas. And so we actually started looking at this before the bylaw and policy information came out. We've got a little village and it's only new, and in fact we were totally missing from the bylaw, except that we used to have a te awa area which is shown on the maps. That had been taken out of the maps, and we submitted that it should be back in. The best part of that area is the part that is down by the river, which is now not suitable because of erosion and weeds and blackberry and so forth. A very big response from our questioning, the biggest of anything, like they're much more interested in dogs than in Three Waters or whatever, came back that they want some more off-leash area. And what's come back in the maps shows that it looks like the te awa area would be retained, but if you're not allowed to go 10 metres from a playground, we have an issue, because the park at the top that's flat is not very big, and by the time you say 10 metres away, it's not really fit for purpose. So if that's going to be what the council say Tamahere can have, I believe we need to fence the playground close in, so that that gives another 10 metres of space for the area, the grassed area. But also, speaking from what I saw, the responses, we'd actually like to have another area in Tamahere as well. We do have a lot of dogs out there and a passionate community of people who want to responsibly exercise their animals. So looking at the draft that came back the other day, I would very definitely be lobbying for some more space. We did think of some other areas, but no doubt the parks people or the people that know the mapping areas can probably come up with some space. I tend to agree with what Mary Ellen said about let's keep it simple. And we know that they can't go near playgrounds, and some people had wanted to use our park in the beginning, early in the morning or late at night, but we do also accept that if people aren't picking up all the poop then and weeing on it, then that's a bit of a problem. So if we can't use the actual sports park, which I think if we communicate this well and have signage, I think signage is one of the really biggest problems, especially in our area. People don't see a sign, they think it's fine. So I think that's going to be something that we need to step up and we need to have budget for. And I don't think we can just say, oh, Tamahere, you've got that little area at Te Awa Park. It's not enough. And the people in our area are very, very keen on having another space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think Tracy will come back with in what sort of time frame in terms of maps for what actually was the intended area rather than as shown for Tamahere. Do you know the time frame for that?
I don't have an exact time frame, but it will need to be done shortly, as Hannah will cover with timings later on, even about this going out to public consultation.
And can I just say something, Axel? Look, just in reply to Sue, look, the trouble is, Sue, we build these bylaws for the undesirables that have dogs that do hurt people. And I don't think, in all honesty, we're trying to catch it. Like, I got a daughter with two Bichon poodle cross dogs, which are gorgeous, and I don't have a problem with dogs. Grew up on a farm. I have farm dogs, or had them. I don't have them any longer. But in saying that, we build laws to deal with the undesirables that use dogs for other reasons, intimidation, and all sorts of things like that. And I think a lot of it comes down to, I suppose, a bit of latitude we give, or the staff give, as to how they treat this sort of thing. But in saying that, we still have to build a law to actually stop that person who made stopping at the Four Square at the service centre in Tamahere and have a couple of Rottweilers that just want to run loose around the village and bite people. And that's the trouble we face, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And Tracy, just when the maps are done, if you can pick up on Sue's other point, which is the 10-metre setback, and actually what is a very small bit of land might have quite a significant effect. So you may just want to keep that in mind when you're looking at that.
If I can just ask through you, Mr. Chairman, could Tracy perhaps give me a call at some stage and we can just talk about some possibilities of other areas? Is that in order or not?
Tracy's nodding, no one's shaking their head.
Yeah.
Sarah's looking.
Yep. Thank you.
Too late, Sarah. You got to put your hand up if you want to say something. Kirsty.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to clarify a few things, and it may have, the conversation probably has moved on from this, but I just wanted to clarify that there are those exemptions already in the bylaw in terms of people being able to take their dogs to vets and things like that, and the guide dogs. So in terms of that blanket prohibition within the CBD, there are already exemptions there. I think another thing that's important to bear in mind, and Mayor Allen may have touched on it, is that we're working from what is there now. We're looking at amending it. So we're not creating a new bylaw or anything like that, like we're working with what we've already got. And in terms of Tracy having conversations with, I think it was Sue. I mean, that's fine, but I think we need to bear in mind that are we tipping over into the consultation process and doing that? This is talking about, you know, what's in front of us and what we want to look at in terms of what we want to put out to the public for consultation. And I think we just need to be mindful of not tipping into that consultation or that submission process through this process rather than going through the actual submission process. I hope that makes sense. It's very garbled, but I just want us to be mindful that there is a process in terms of receiving public feedback, and that generally goes through that submission, hearings, deliberations process rather than the workshop process.
Yep, and look, that's a point well made. I think in fairness, in this instance, we're looking at some corrections to maps that are not in front of us. You know, so we're actually we're workshopping with you know, with maps that are not actually already acknowledged. Not to be right.
Absolutely.
That's a bit tricky. Councillor Church.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, just that clarity. I know we just modified those good comments. I recall last time we did it where, and this is my understanding of recollection from the last time we did it, Raglan was 50-50 whether they wanted dogs in the CBD or not. Ngātawahi, and so it's dividing the baby in half, half wanted, half didn't. Ngātawahi and Huntly definitely didn't want them in the main streets. And Tuakau, Pocono and Te Kauwhata were, I guess, was aligning with the dog bylaws in Auckland City Council as well as Hamilton, where on lead in the main streets is part of their bylaws, and there's a lot of conversations around that. That was my understanding of those things. So we've got maps. So, and I know that we had some submissions where people wanted to be able to walk their dog to the local dairy at the shops, pick up their paper, and socialise their dog in those main streets and parks and on lead and in control, not tied up and left by themselves. So yeah, if we just leave it as it is, that's fine. But what I would ask Tracy is, because since this discussion today, either we're going to simplify our maps in those main streets. We're not talking about Ngātawahi and Huntly where it's prohibited. I'm talking about if we're going to have maps with its main streets of the CBDs mapped out, which I don't personally think we can simplify it a lot better, then we need that Pocono map in, because Pocono is by square centimetre a really busy CBD area, so I need to put that back in, or obviously we'll take them out and be clear about where those on-lead areas are. Just ask that. One thing I'd like to just ask for you as well is, I noticed when I looked back through this was the skate parks where dogs are allowed within 1 metre of the edge of a skate bowl. And I just wondered whether 1 metre was actually too close. Now, I don't know if there's old skaters here. I'm looking at you, Axel. Or anyway, as a skater, to me that seemed quite close to a bowl. For example, when they're doing whatever they do, loopy loops. It's a small point, but I just thought if we've got an opportunity to consider it, and if there'd been any accidents with dogs being too excited around particularly skating.
So you want to comment on loops, Tracy?
From an operational point of view, as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge right now, I cannot recall any complaints around dogs and skate parks in our area that I know of, but I'd need to go back to my officers to ask them if they know of any in the past 5 years.
That's okay. You were just a thought. And two things. My recollection was at Port Waikato that Maraetai Bay was an on-lead area. Now, I'm not sure how, I'm now a bit confused about, I assumed all reserves, unless otherwise stated, are on-lead areas. So is that reason why it was taken off as having to be specified? So just a question you can tell me later. And the other one is, I guess, because you've got the mapping, the Kariatahi Beach map, because the Waikato boundary is about a kilometre down, or 450 metres to a kilometre south of the car park. The map, we need to really show, we can't really show a map of where the car park areas is because that's Auckland City Council, just to clarify that you're aware of that. And those other maps like the Whangarata, I guess you'll take offline and as required before this goes out? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sue, did you want to jump in with a comment ahead of Councillor?
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I guess when we have a bylaw, it needs to be enforceable. And yes, it's nice to be able to be a little bit, have a few grey areas where you can, decide on some things and not on others. But if there is a bylaw in place and we happen to ignore the policy or the driver behind that, and somebody chooses to complain about that, then we do have to follow that up and we do have to enforce it. So I just wanted to make sure that any decisions that are made, we are cognizant of the fact they are enforceable. And I'm thinking around CBDs and things like that, it could be quite problematic trying to enforce. By nature, we don't want to be enforcing, but our public ask us to enforce. So any decisions that are made today or in the bylaw, I guess I just want to raise the awareness that they do have to be relatively easily enforceable. That's the only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. Councillor Sedgwick.
Thank you. This is not on the maps specifically, but it is a process issue in that signage around playgrounds is we know that's important because people do take their dogs and their kids to the playground. We've all seen kids and dogs intermingling. We're very inconsistent with our responses in terms of signage. Some parts say it'll be considered as part of the LTP. Raglan, for instance, it says we're working on the signage. In Tamahiri, the signs are up. So I've had a request in for probably over a year to have signs put at Te Kauwhara. I'm wondering what it takes to get that elevated from being considered as part of the LTP to actually elevating it to we don't like dogs in playgrounds with children, therefore we will put up some signs. It's not rocket science. Why aren't we doing it?
I take it that's a rhetorical question, Councillor.
And that is a rhetorical question, but it would be interesting to know that this is a very, very small expenditure. It's something that is of interest and concern. I don't understand why it's being lumped and considered as part of the LTP. Perhaps somebody could clarify.
Sue, can I throw you under the bus?
Yes, and I was going to say I can't answer that question at the moment. I'm not familiar with the signage budget. I'd imagine it sits in Parks and Reserves. But what we will do is we will follow that up and see what is available and what the process is around getting better signage. So we'll make that a point. Yeah.
Thank you. Clearly there is already signage. If it is already up, therefore it's not very difficult to run off more signs. And again, as I've said before, if you're finding sign writers difficult to access, I can certainly put you in touch with one.
Yep, I'll follow that up.
What I do know is that for the Tamahiri ones, and we do have some signs now, we were very keen to go further than the bylaw as a community committee. And I think following a suggestion from Councillor Church, there was an acknowledgement that we could put up a Tamahiri Community Committee requests that and we were covering things like vaping as well, which were before we ourselves had bylaws on it. Having said that, we got all the correct permissions and Jacob was organising it, etc., and that's a good year and a half ago, and we never actually got a sign for that. So yeah, we're in a bit of a funny space on this. Okay, let me come to Councillor McGuire.
We're staying in level 3.
Until Monday, yeah.
Right, I just want to go back to page 5 and move away from the dog run areas. My concern is that 2 dogs per property in the rural area, which I support, but last time we tried to do this, we come unstuck badly. And we had all the dog breeders and the anyone that required dogs, or think of pig hunters and the like. We need to word this far better, because we've come back with the same scenario and we're going to end up in the same place. And it was a very difficult exercise controlling unruly females about their pedigree dogs and the like. So it was a difficult one to deal with, and we sort of lost the round. So I've got a situation out on Taupori Road there where a person's come out from Hamilton City and they couldn't keep their dogs, more than 2 dogs in the city. They've come out to Lifestyle Block, bought it purposely to run these dogs on. They've got 15 huskies there. They never shut their mouths from daylight to dark. They fight, they carry on, and we cannot do a thing about it. Now, the people are ringing me constantly, and Tracy can't do anything. She's going to try and get them on the barking, but that's a long shot by what I understand. The city are trying to deregister these people via the city, because that's where they cause a lot of trouble to start with. So whether they have any success, I don't know, but we need to reword this so we don't get hammered on this one. I don't know what the thoughts of the rest of you are on this in the rural community.
Councillor Maguire, just to remind everyone that we are currently live streaming as well, but in terms of general comments, what is it that you need the policy to try and achieve?
Well, we need to explain more fully who's exempt and who isn't. So we have a clearer message going out. Whether Kirsty can have a comment on that, I don't know, but we need a clearer message going out. We had a poor message going last time, which is probably 15 years ago now. So we need to get it right this time if we want to win.
All right, so Kirsty, I'll come to you, and in fairness, it probably wasn't you 15 years ago doing this. So what's the intended game plan this time?
All right. No, it wasn't me 15 years ago. You are correct. Look, the reality is that, and we discussed this, I think, at the previous workshop. What we're trying to avoid is instances where, and we have clear examples of this occurring within our district, where we have no ability to limit the number of dogs that are held in the rural zones or properties that are zoned rural. That has resulted in a number of issues simply because we have no ability to limit it. So what we've proposed to do is the exceptions are, in my view, quite clear. The exceptions are premises which are authorised to be boarding kennels or doggy daycare centres. We could possibly put in another exception for breeders, but I don't know how we would have to say that they would have to be registered breeders. I'm not sure that, I don't know how that works is the reality in that. We have said that there will be an exception for working dogs, so those that are on farms. And I'm not going to go into this because it's something that I will be dealing with later within the workshop, but I think we've resolved the issue that was raised previously about how we keep the 2 dogs and have the exception for working dogs with the different houses on the farms. That was something that was raised at the last workshop. And we've said where a permit can be obtained. So I guess the response that we would give to those people who are saying, well, I already have, more than 2 dogs and I want that to continue, is that will be fine. You can apply for a permit. There's details below the clause 11, which is the keeping of dogs, which is clause 12, which talks about how you apply for a permit to keep more than 2 dogs. I appreciate that this is potentially going to be quite controversial within the community, but like I say, we need our animal control team, more to the point, needs the ability to be able to control the examples that we do have of dogs where there is unlimited number of dogs and where our hands are tied in terms of what we can do.
I think I do agree with you that being a breeder is potentially leaving a very large back door open.
Absolutely. I think it's, apologies for, didn't mean to interrupt, Chair, but I think it does open that door around what is a breeder, do they have to be registered, how are they registered? I think the cleaner way of doing that and the easier or more easy to be enforced way of doing that is saying if you are a breeder, then apply for a permit, you know, and if you're found to be a suitable breeder, then that permit can be issued to you.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Yep, been down this path about 15 years ago, so I have been around long enough to remember it. Hey, look, and I just want to take Councillor McGuire's point here, which is quite adamant. And if the beautiful Pam Douglas is watching today, live streaming, Pam was the one that from the Breeders Association who certainly came in and tailed us up when we dealt with this about 15 years ago, I think, Rob. and I think what the conclusion we came to, and I get what Kirsty's saying, but that argument is the same argument that happened 12 years ago. Why do we have to apply as registered breeders for a dispensation? So I think what we need to do here is, you know, we've got two categories. There's working dogs, which are farm, and that definition, they're farm dogs, working dogs. That's what I call a working dog, other than a Foundation for Blind dog. But I would suggest that one of the ways, I think, from memory, you can solve the issue around who do you give dispensation in the rural area around additional numbers. They do have a register of their own registered breeders. And through that, I am pretty sure they've got their own rules around what is justified as a breeder. Maybe Tracy knows a bit more about that. And they vet themselves effectively. And maybe there's some essence in doing that, because those are exactly the people that will come in and actually throw rocks at you again for making the same mistake that we actually made 15 years ago around not identifying them as a group. So to have breeders, they have a registration within themselves, I think, Tracy, from memory. And I think from there, you actually look towards them policing that registration on your behalf in a way. If they're not on that registration and they want to get on it, they have to prove to the Breeders Association that you're worthy of being there. And they were pretty stringent back then. So let's look at that as an option. Otherwise, go out with this, you're going to pick the same fight that we tried to pick 15 years ago, and it doesn't work. Let's try and get it right to start with.
Thanks for that, Alan.
Okay, I'm going to go to the very passive-aggressive Janice Sedgwick there. Thank you. I'll see your hand, and then back to you, Kirsty.
Registered breeders should be registered with what was the New Zealand Kennel Club. I don't know if it's still called the Kennel Club or Kennel Association, and that's where breeders registered. That's where you should be buying breeding well-bred dogs from. Of course, you should be adopting them from the pound, but that's the registration. If they're not in the Kennel Club registration, I would say they're not registered breeders.
Thank you. Kirsty, further comment or?
I was just going to say we can include that exception in there in terms of a registered breeder. We're happy to do that. Just to clarify, so working dogs, what we term working dogs is the definition within the Act. It's really broad. We didn't replicate it in this bylaw because it is quite wordy. It's quite, I think, if memory, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's around about a page. So we just simply using that definition, and I think it includes assistance dogs and everything along those lines. So that was just a clarification comment.
Might I suggest that we actually, and I ran into Pam about 4 years ago on a flight to Vancouver, of all places. She sat beside me. So I would suggest we actually have a discussion with them around how can we actually enforce this, support them, but actually enforce this, because if you can use them to control it for you too in another way. I just don't want us to get into the same muddle we got into 15 years ago, and it just ended up in the debacle with a whole lot of people coming in through a hearing and absolutely going off their tree at us, and we got it wrong. So let's see if we can get it right with them first to start with. And they know where we're coming from, and they're supportive of it. They're just supporting their thing. And funny enough, Pam actually rang me about 6 to 12 months ago. So she lives down at Martingy, I think, or in around there somewhere. So look, have a talk to her or somebody like that.
I wonder if it's worth then just for the purposes of the bylaw, and this is again, I don't want to tip into that consultation process when we're not in that consultation process. I wonder if it's worth putting in there that the exemption around however it's worded, the registered breeders. I think if we do that, then most of the registered breeders would be okay with it. And anyone that's not okay with it, we can then go back and say, look, if you're not a registered breeder, but you believe that you should be granted a permit, then you have the ability to apply for that permit and go through that process. I think that would be clearer.
Thank you.
Pam's Craig Road, Newstead. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you. Hannah and Tracy, sorry, I should have let you know that I'm trying a new form of chairing. It's based on the writings of James Joyce. This is a stream of consciousness approach to meeting chairing. I'm not quite sure how well it's worked. So can I ask you, have we actually covered in our general wandering discussions what you need covered from this session today? Because we've got less than 10 minutes left.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure, Dorothy. And then have a think about that answer, please.
Yeah, just about pig dogs in town. Are they classed as a working dog or what? They're kennelled and you very rarely hear them, but there is always a smell and there's always rodents that come with it. But there used to be, or as far as I know, still is 2 lots of people in Taupo that have pig dogs, and there's usually 4 or 5 of them. What does that come under?
They're not working dogs.
They're not?
No.
Okay. So is that 2 or more is what you've been talking about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Hannah, Tracy, what else do we need to achieve?
Hannah.
So I can go ahead. So we've talked through a number of the proposed changes to the bylaw, the policy, how the maps to be displayed more generally. If I could just briefly go over the main changes proposed to the dog control areas. So we're proposing 5 locations, a change from dog exercise areas to on-lead areas, because some of these parks are sports fields or beside a road or are quite busy. Those 5 ones are listed in the memo. Did you want to talk through any of those more specifically, or do you have feedback on those locations proposed to be changed from dog exercise areas to on-lead areas?
So just give me the page number, please.
3, at the top of page 3.
Thank you. Any comments from anybody in the workshop here on Hannah's question? I don't see any here. Okay, go to the next one.
Cool. And then the next one is around 4 dog exercise areas, which are reduced in size or amended slightly. Any comments on those 4 proposed changes?
Probably just one, and I'm trying to remember what I read yesterday. I noticed the one in Horror 2 is because it covers the road. Is that correct, Hannah? Was it that one? No, the one at TK covered the road. That's right. Yeah. So it's to reduce it back to the run area that doesn't include the road, obviously.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, that's right. And what was the one at Horror 2? I know I've read it, but you'll have to tell me again.
I have to find it.
The AFCO Park one.
The off-leash area previously encompassed the playground.
Playground, that's right.
And out
Yeah.
to the edge of the road, which is not
Yeah.
fenced.
She's cool.
Okay, cool.
Any other comments from anybody? Speak now or forever. ...
And you got the 2 new exercise areas?
Yeah, so I was just going to bring that up. So the next 2 changes are the on-lead areas, which will be expanded. We've discussed on-lead areas today, so we'll look at possibly removing that category, expanding the prohibited area within Huntly, and then lastly, the 2 new dog exercise areas proposed. Is there any feedback on those?
Yeah, through the chair, I have the Centennial Park one. You've commented on it, and you've got it saying it's map 2043 later on in your later on in your PDF, but you haven't got it there.
Okay, we can look at Centennial Park mapping.
Yeah, you have noticed it earlier, later on, just picking up in that third part there. And a map for that whangārata.
Okay.
Thank you. Greg?
One of the 2 areas in Narrawahi was the reserve by Regent Street. That actually has a name now.
Okay.
Lady Raiha something or other. My page is to change it to by name.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you. And just while it occurs to me, sorry, slow thinking this morning, Hannah, under the prohibited areas in the conversation today, I think there was also somebody made a point about the distance from a skate bowl. Apparently seems a bit confusing to me, particularly because a bowl is likely to be raised, which means that you're clambering halfway across the skate park to get to the bowl. And what about the rest of the skate park? So maybe just give some thought to whether a skate park is treated like a playground, and if not, why not? In totality, as opposed to, you know.
We can do that.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire, and then Maxine Rana-Tufanga.
Yeah, the Matangi Sports Ground. Have you sort of got a tick off for the rugby fraternity there?
No, we haven't. We were intending to contact them directly as part of consultation, but we haven't spoken to them yet.
That could cause a bit of a problem there with dogs running around there, where people play rugby and all sorts there. So it might be worth rethinking that one.
Okay, we can contact them prior to PNR to confirm what they're thinking around that.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Maxine Rana-Tufanga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go back to the discussion around pig dogs. You know, and it was said that it's not, a pig dog is not a working dog. But in the definition of a working dog is one that was laid out in the Act. But in the Act, it also says that a working dog is declared by resolution of the territorial authority. So council can say that a pig dog is a working dog if we wanted to, if council wanted to. So I do think that a pig dog is a working dog. And yeah, I do. I think that a pig dog is a working dog, and council can decide also that it is a working dog. And I think I would encourage council to say that it is. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, is there a comment on that, or should I?
Yeah, there is. I sadly disagree with Maxine insofar as it's a recreational dog. I'm not sure that there's any professional pig hunters. There used to be deer colours and the likes, but I'm not sure that you can class the average gentleman or person who owns pig dogs who goes out into the bush as running working dogs. I'm just still, I had my rant earlier, and I just have listened and I've listened, and I just wonder, we are bending over backwards to make it easy for dog owners to walk about and do things, and particularly I'm absolutely appalled that there's any consideration of having dogs running around on our sports fields. And I'm not sure whether staff are listening to us, or whether, I'm not sure what the consensus of council really is. I'd like a poll of some sort. Are we in favour of having dogs on our playing sports fields where we have human beings being asked to go in the swill that's on the ground? To me, I find it quite offensive and absolutely appalling that anybody's thinking of putting human beings on dog feces or urine. So if that's what is being promoted, I am so against it. And I would like to know what our council, because we haven't actually voted on it, what do the people think? Thanks.
Well, I think that's the point, that it's not that staff are not listening. In fact, staff are here to listen, and we have not put that. We have not actually, as a council, certainly in my time, ever taken a view on whether multi-use, green spaces should include, or which one should also have animals on them, with the requirement of picking up afterwards. And look, I've got kids that play on local sports fields here and in the city and in Waipa. So I understand the issue you're raising, absolutely.
So can't we give some direction, please?
I think that's entirely appropriate. This would be the time to do so, I dare say.
Thank you.
Hannah, there is no, I'm also conscious of time, and we've got externals coming in for the next one, but Hannah, where is you're not aware of any direction or sort of policy statement in regards to dogs on playing surfaces, grassed playing surfaces?
So the bylaw, yeah, there is, with the bylaw in its current form, prohibits dogs from sports fields unless they are allowed within the dog control area. So if it is mapped as on lead, dogs are permitted on lead. If it's and then automatically it's prohibited. Within some of the changes we're proposing, we do change to propose some current areas from on lead to prohibited because they are sports fields.
So actually the issue is one of custom and practice, perhaps lack of signage and education, rather than the guidance being there or the law.
Yeah, Axel, it's on bottom of page 41 and by the top of page 42. It very clearly says, if I read it right, no dog shall be allowed to enter or remain on any public place. Now it's changed the number. D, which is developed or marked out as a sports field unless otherwise specified within Schedule 1. So if it's a sports field,
yeah,
then they're not supposed to be having any dogs on there. Not allowed to enter.
Well, then I come back to your point, Axel, in the signage.
So it's and I think that's a bigger question. Is perhaps that's something we can actually ask council to look at, because we've all got this issue around signage. And to be fair, for the public who want to complain or understand the rules, for dog owners, we want to good socialise dogs and behaviour. We obviously have a real lack of signage in the area, and I think that's a really important part as to where's that money, or planning towards in the annual plan or whatever, that we look at that signage area for the district, or have areas where that are key. I think that would be very helpful because the signage is coming up all the time. But to me, this seems really clear around sports fields.
Yeah, okay. Maxine, do you have a quick point? Otherwise, I'll come to Tracy and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to, I am labouring a bit, but I think that whether a pig dog is a working dog or not, for some people it's a matter of circumstance.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
That's me.
Thank you. Hannah and Tracy, we do need to wrap this up. We have another workshop there. We did quite a lot in 10 minutes. I'm impressed with that. What do we need now to wrap up?
The only comment I wanted to make just quickly was that the Te Kōwhai and Whara sports fields, we've gone from off-leash to on-leash to try and mitigate that faeces problem. And Hannah was going to wrap up around the timings of everything.
Yeah, so as mentioned, the next step is November PNR, when we plan to bring the proposed bylaw and policy to the Policy and Regulatory Committee. So I think we've been given some good direction today. We'll particularly look at the comms, or the necessity of having on-lead areas, and how we can potentially change the maps to make that clearer, or whether that category just needs to be amended or removed entirely. And some of those maps which need to be tidied up in terms of sports fields specifically, we can have a look at that as well to make sure that's clear.
And please do so, and perhaps just highlight if there are any areas where by implication or omission or change or whatever, that there's still tension exists between that overall philosophically no dogs on playing surfaces versus actually it's been permitted for XYZ.
Can I just ask a question before we run to Tracy? I know we're running late. So it's more around process. So is the plan to bring this back again, or just tidy up what you think you've heard today and put it out?
No, I think, Alan, we have to bring it back, because if the next policy and reg meeting, Jan will be away and I'll be chairing that. And I don't want to have another hour and a half.
So that's why I'm asking the question, because I think this needs to come back, because I can see this potentially, through no fault of anybody's, getting wrong without getting support, if you get what I mean.
The original intention was to bring it straight to PNR. We can look at our timeframes and see if we can work in another workshop before bringing it back to PNR. This bylaw is required to be adopted by May, otherwise it will get revoked. So we'll just need we'll look at that closely and come back to you.
Thank you. I think you've got some good guidance on that one.
If I can just add to that. So I think we need to be really careful, because it does have to be finalised and adopted by May. We need to take into account the fact that we'll be going into Christmas, and so we should probably take that month off Christmas in terms of consultation. That then takes us to January. We'll need another month minimum for the public consultation for that. That takes it possibly February, March. Then we need to have the hearing. Then we need to have deliberations. Then we need to adopt it. So all of that needs to be done by May next year. So I'm just mindful of that time, and I just wanted to sort of raise that in terms of we are on a relatively tight schedule, because if we don't adopt it by May, it will revoke and we won't have any dog control bylaw.
So democracy works with me around workshops, and I've just put in 2 additional workshops that weren't programmed because of the workload. I'm happy to make provision for this, because I just find we'll save ourselves a hell of a lot of grief if we actually get this closer to right than wrong through a misunderstanding. And I don't want staff to be in that situation. So if Hannah and the team come back with something, we can say, yeah, no, we're happy with that now. Get it out there.
Okay, thank you. And with that, let's wrap up. I think that's a sensible way forward, because none of us want to relitigate things that we already knew were points of tension, if we can get it right to start with, or closer to right. With that, I'm going to close the current workshop. Thanks very